Welcome to Cisco Unboxed. I'm Dan Stewart, engineer here within our Ingram Micro Business Transformation Center. Today we're going to take a look at the Cisco 9100 series access points loaded with the embedded wireless LAN controller software. This is one of the modes you can now run within the access point as a wireless controller for other access points. This new embedded wireless controller option is something that you may have heard the idea before from Cisco, and its prior generation actually was called Cisco Mobility Express. So they're taking that idea of access points operating as both a client serving device and an access point as a manager, and now have put it into the Cisco Catalyst wireless access points as well. One of the options we want to showcase in this demonstration today is how we can get an access point that is preloaded with the embedded wireless controller out of the box, and using the command line interface, get it ready to go for a day zero configuration and ready to load that GUI interface to manage our access point as a manager from there. So to start out with, we do have our console interface configured here. It's running just through a couple background setups as we're just waiting for us to give it some input. So let's take it from there. Once you do go into the access point, and if you don't interface with it right away, you'll be met with a little prompt that says, hey, please run the day zero device provisioning. Now, there are different ways to go ahead and configure this device. One option will be using the air provisioning software. That's really a broadcast of wireless from the access point to your client device, and then administering a lot of the configuration from a GUI platform that's built automatically as a setup for day zero over a wireless mechanism. But today, like we said, we're going to take a look at what happens if I want to do it from my tried and true command line way out of the box for the access point. So first off, in order to kick this, we're going to put it into an enable mode and run the command setup. Again, this is something you can do if you didn't answer the prompt right upon the powering on of the access point. Once we hit setup, we'll say yes to continue with our configuration dialog, and then yes, we do want to enter that basic management setup. What we're going to be met with there is what is our wireless host name. So we're going to put, I like doing the convention of 9115 embedded wireless LAN controller. And then since this is the controller or the main managing access point of our other client access points, I'm just going to give it the name of, well, control in that description. We will enable a secret. This one we'll keep as Cisco 123. Cisco 123 for our enable password, and then Cisco 123 to satisfy our virtual termination password or terminal password. No SNMP for this design here. We're going to hit no for that. And then we're going to be met with what is the current IP address of the access point now. So it is powered by PoE. It is getting an IP address from the network that it is assigned to when we did put it on the 18 network. And the way our DHCP scopes are assigned is that everything from a .100 IP address and above will be reserved for DHCP, which is why it's pulling down the 108 IP address. So we do want to now start tying this interface, which happens to be the only interface on the device from a network connectivity standpoint, as a IP addressed interface. We can leave it as DHCP, or we'll see what happens next. And you do have to be very explicit by typing out that entire string of the interface. We do want to configure an IP address on this interface, so we will hit yes. And then we do want to move it off of our DHCP range into our reserved range, which will, in this case, we'll put a .10 IP address on the 18 network. Keep the subnet mask looking, that's good there. And then once you've entered those parameters, you're now going to have a point to review everything you've just done. So we can see the host name here is where we've changed it. Our secret and password, we can change that at a later date, but for our demo purposes, Cisco 123 works for this. Our one interface that we do have now is set up with a 18.10 static IP address for this system. So I'm going to go ahead and say that of the 3 different options we can do for this solution, we do want to go ahead and save this configuration and exit. Once we do apply that, it will do a building of the configuration, start applying those settings to our system, and will now get us into a state where we want to go and see if we can manage this from the web GUI now that we've established its new settings from the console interface. First thing we will notice is that yes, the hostname has in fact been absorbed. We have changed it to this, and it is being properly applied here for this system. If we do a show version real quick, we will showcase that this is running version 16.12, which is the first version of the Mobility Express software able to be installed with this access point solution. So we do know that this is where we're starting our journey from, and again, subsequent releases will improve upon that. So if we do show running brief, we can just get a quick review to make sure everything we have applied is going to be where we want it to be. Version here is 16.12. We do see our host name. We are seeing in the background here it's starting to be added as a manager password and solution for our system. So we're starting to soak in all those changes. We can then see here that our interface of gigabit 0 is still giving us the 18.10 that we're looking for out of the solution. Defaults the IP route to the gigabit Ethernet 0 interface for this system. And I think I scrolled too far. I wanted to see if it does give us, there we go. Everything we need there. Looks good from here. Oh, that's what I wanted to show. So by default, because the system is getting ready for its day 0 provisioning, you would see that this type of username and password is going to be part of the air provisioning system with that wireless network that is created as the air provision design. So this will be a default username and password when enacting that air provision wizard on that side. But for now, we didn't apply any username and password explicitly, so it's just going to give us that information of ready to build out our system. Default to an NTP server shows all of our line creations for accessibility based on the passwords we set up at the beginning. And it'll still give us this notice here about welcome to the interface and please complete day 0 provisioning. So if we do look, we still have under our networks from our network adapters, we now will see that the Cisco Air Provision broadcast from the access point is ready and waiting for us still with this configuration. So even though we've done a day 0 design with the command line, it's still looking to say that, well, hey, we still want you to go through the Air Provision that's broadcasted from the access point, join this with that web user ID and password to get into this environment and administer this solution that way. But we're going to say for our design and purpose here that we still just want to live through the GUI or the command line and go to town with our working solution. So at this point, if we go ahead to try and get into our IP address, so 192.168. We said 18.10. We'll notice that it is actually changing it to a mywifi.cisco.com, which is really where the air provisioning app is looking to redirect us once we've actually joined that broadcast wireless SSID. So right now, in our current command line state, we've not been able to access the GUI at this point. So I'm going to go back here and say, okay, we see the settings are where they need to be. I'm actually going to go and write this to memory. And we'll notice that now the day 0 wireless config is done. So we've actually had to explicitly say I'm going to write memory to the configuration that we wanted to make sure that this access point is going to be accessible moving past the broadcast of the air provisioning and use it from the command line and making sure we're doing everything explicitly with our own control in the solution. So I'm going to do a quick ping here to see when this access point does come up. Whoops, helps if we actually tell it to ping. There we go. All right, so now we're seeing a reply of a ping. Looks good here. And I will now try to go back to our interface. And here we are able to get into that interface, hit the advanced button, proceed as always, and now we're met with a username and password. So without enacting the right memory configuration, there was really no way that the system would know you've completed or want to essentially bypass the day zero wireless configuration. Now, we'll do a show run brief again because there is one thing we do want to take a look out for. And once it does come up here, we will notice that the IP address is where it needs to be. The classifier looks good, but we've actually removed any username. So that day zero username of web user ID or web UID, it has been purged. So there is no actual usernames because we've not configured that in our day zero design going from the command line. So we will create a username, admin, and give it a privilege of 15, and we'll give it a secret of Cisco 123. Keep it very nice and easy there. We'll apply it and we'll end that and we'll write that down. All right, so we'll build the configuration, and if we go back here, we try to get into admin, and now we will do our password that we just created, and now we're able to get into our web user interface stemming from the day zero configuration of the command line. And from here, we can get to town configuring the rest of our access points.